Here comes Marco, so I will go ahead and hit record for this session, and I will be serving as your moderator. So as I was sharing with Devin a moment ago, I'll monitor the chat function in case there's any questions that come along that I can pass along. And then when there's about 5 minutes and 10 minutes, or 10 minutes and 5 minutes remaining before the hour ends, I'll kind of give y'all a heads up on that as well. But otherwise, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Devin Swiner, and I'm gonna share my screen and then we will get our presentation started. Just give me 1 second. So the title of our presentation is A Day in the Life of a MacScientist. So we're gonna talk a little bit about our journeys in STEM, so feel free to ask us questions about that towards the end. We left time for a Q&A, but what our company is called MacScientists, and MacScientists, essentially our tagline is a brand committed to changing the face of STEM. So our overall goal is to uplift women of color to pursue STEM careers. So that could look like a blog, which we have a lot of content on. We do workshops. So we have a goal setting workshop that we've done. We've also done a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop for an industrial company. So this is just a picture of us at the National Society of Black Engineers Conference in 2018. So that's one of the conferences we go to. We've gone to a few times to put on a goal setting workshop. Like I said, we do diversity, equity, and inclusion seminars. And also we have a mentorship program called Mac Mentors. So the overall goal really of MacScientists and kind of its inception was this idea I had with Carrie in the movie theater when we went to see Hidden Figures. And I was sitting there like, okay, Carrie, I have an idea. So we sat there in the movie theater and I was like, I didn't like the fact that it took a movie that, about these amazing women that did all of this great work for NASA that people just had no idea about. So our goal, my goal, at least in its inception and that initial conversation with Carrie, was to try to find a way to reach the next generation of scientists and to reach people that are like our colleagues that are doing these things, to really just talk about, our challenges and really uplift the community. So trying to find community for Black women specifically was really important. Then that same night, we went to go see Courtney. We were sitting in the car and we were like, okay, I have this great idea. How do we do this? Especially because all of our journeys are very different and we occupy different places in STEM. So trying to figure out a way to bridge that gap for people. And the only letter we were missing was an engineer. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna call Shoya. I contacted Shoya about this. We went to undergrad together at the University of Pittsburgh, and it kind of was born then. The name MacScientist is a nickname that my aunt gave me in high school. Mac like Mac lipstick, because I love lipstick. That is something that a lot of people know about me. And I'm also a scientist. So we were trying to think about like what to call this. That just felt like a natural name for the group and for the brand. Really just to showcase that women, especially women of color, are allowed to be multifaceted and are allowed to be scientists, but also to do other things, and that's completely okay and completely acceptable. So we'll do introduction. So like I said, my name is Dr. Devin Swiner. I'm a recent graduate of The Ohio State University. I'm an analytical chemist. I'm moving to New Jersey in a few weeks, actually, and I accepted a senior scientist position at Merck & Company. I went to a Holy Cross school for high school. I'm an alum of Bishop McNamara. That's how I know Carrie and Courtney. We graduated class of 2012. Then I moved on to the University of Pittsburgh and got my bachelor's degree in chemistry with minors in Africana studies and sociology. So I like having this. McNamara taught me to have this very well-rounded education and to care about people holistically. And that's a lot of the things that I've been doing since graduating from Pitt and even being at Ohio State. I'm also one of the co-founders of one of the Twitter movements, Black in Chem. And that was really just a movement that we started last summer to really just highlight and make Black chemists visible and really just talk about our issues, meet each other. I know what it's like to be one of few or just the only one in a space, especially in chemistry. So Black in Chem was a way to meet other people that also feel that they are one of few or, they're the only one in their spaces. So with that, I'm gonna toss it to Shoya.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Ademusoyo, Awosika-Olumo. I graduated with a degree in computer engineering from the University of Pittsburgh with Devin in 2016. And when I did graduate, I was the only Black woman that year to graduate with a degree in computer engineering in the entire university. And to me, like, as I went through my college experience, I really realized like why there wasn't a lot of people that looked at me, and it had nothing to do with like the access or the inability for them to do it, but rather the fact that like it is a very isolating experience, and it can be really hard to try and do something when you don't know what success looks like for someone that looks like you. And I've kind of let that be like my driving force for being able to want to contribute to MacScientist and be a part of this brand and this company, to work on increasing my visibility and showcasing how you can be creative, you can read, you can travel, you can do everything that you want to do and still have a very fulfilling career in STEM. I currently work also as a senior software engineer at MailChimp, which is an email marketing company. Before that, I had worked at Goldman Sachs as a software engineer as well. And in addition to working as a software engineer, I do run my own digital consulting agency that helps working professionals and online service providers leverage their personal brand so that they can position themselves as experts. So yeah, that's about me in a nutshell, and I'll pass it on to Carrie.
Thanks, Shoyo. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Alexander. As Devin said, I attended Bishop McNamara High School along with her and Courtney, which is a Holy Cross institution, which is how we were actually connected to Dr. Clark, who was our principal, and then later on the president and CEO of the school. So as Devin said, we came up in a high school that was, around the values, right in the foundation of the Holy Cross Institute. And after my time at McNamara, I went on to attend Drexel University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I was a student athlete, and I played basketball there. And initially I was studying engineering, and then eventually went more the technology route. So I actually got my degree in information technology back in 2017 from Drexel. And then from there, I actually moved to New York, Brooklyn, New York, where I currently reside. And right now I'm working as a tech consultant or a security consultant at a company called Avanade, which is overall it's a technical consulting firm that was created by Microsoft and Accenture back in, I think, early 2000s to sort of kind of bridge the gap between technology and business. And so we focus a lot on Microsoft technology. We are considered the leading Microsoft experts when it comes to the Microsoft ecosystem. So I do a lot of work with different Microsoft technologies and things of that nature. And my focus is around security, specifically cloud security operations. So I do a lot of work around Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform. So that's kind of what I do 9 to 5, my regular day job. But in addition to that, outside of just working in the tech space, because of my background in sports, my background in basketball specifically, I also work as a skills development coach, volunteering, and also working professionally to teach kids in my neighborhood in Bed-Stuy, which is in Brooklyn, the game of basketball, right? Bringing them kind of the information and knowledge and skill set to potentially get to college maybe, or maybe even go pro and pursue things in that route. So kind of, just a way to give back to the community where I'm living, and kind of just, sharing the knowledge that I've had and the experiences that I've had with the next generation, both in technology, but also in sports.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Courtney Young. Much like Carrie and Devin, I am a McNamara Mustang. I graduated in 2012, and then I went on to Frostburg State University, where I played basketball all 4 years. And much like Carrie, I started off in the engineering route. And as I noticed the shift in technology, I wanted to kind of focus on that. So I moved over to information systems, where I graduated also with a minor in business. Then I went on to actually work for a small business company called Legit Stats, which is a sports statistics company that is one of the DMV leading stat and media providers in the area. And I got to learn a lot about just the business of sports, and I learned a lot from that and was grateful for that experience. From there, I went on to Microtech, which was a SDV, OSB, small disabled veteran-owned business, and got to do a little bit of procurement. So just kind of focused on fulfilling small contracts between us and the government for hardware, software, maintenance solutions. And now I'm currently a security advisor at Zermount, where I really help a lot of systems get onboarded into to a point where they're at a place where they can operate. They have the authorization to operate. So I'm just kind of helping people go through the RMF process, and also assisting system security owners with maintaining their authorization to operate. And so I'm really grateful for this experience, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, friends. So we're going to start this off by talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the first thing we want to talk about is what is diversity. So something that we like to talk about first when we do give like recommendations to companies, organizations, institutions, is really making sure that you define what diversity means to you. Like if you're looking to increase racial diversity, if you're looking to increase diversity amongst perspectives, cultures, etc., those are things you want to take into consideration first. So there are 4 types of diversity. So whether you've realized there was 4 different types, there are 4 different types. You have internal diversity. So those are the ones that you're born into. So that looks like race, that looks like ethnicity, things like that, things that you can't inherently change. There are external diversities, there's organizational and worldview. So you want to think about religion or age, physical abilities, your job level. These are all ways to be diverse. But something that we also want you to make sure that you all are thinking about is this awareness of intersectionality. So myself as a Black woman, so I was assigned female at birth, but I also identify as a woman, that those experiences or those multiple factors interact in a very specific way that can be complex, right? So I can be marginalized because I'm Black, I can be marginalized because I'm a woman as well. I could be marginalized because of my religion, things like that, my nationality. The certain skills that I have. So you want to really make sure when you think about diversity, you're not just thinking about it in one particular way. You want to think about all of the ways that someone can be different than someone else, or what you're used to, or how you personally identify, where you fit any of these puzzle pieces. And really be aware that intersectionality also plays a very complex role in making sure that you're creating equitable policies, you're creating an equitable environment that speaks to intersectionality specifically. So why, or what does this even mean? Like, what is DEI? So we want you to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion as a business strategy, and not just an HR program. Yes, it's great to have the numbers, right? Like, it's great that you have, like 20% Black people, 20% Latinx community, 20% people that identify with some form of disability, but it's not just about the numbers, because what people have found is that when you have an effective diversity and inclusion strategy, that's showing us that the company values differences. It advertises commitment to develop the best talent in a given organization. So that just means that you're walking the walk and you're talking the talk, right? Like, you don't want to just be like, oh, well, we have the numbers, but that doesn't help drive any innovation strategies. And some of the reasons why it's really good to have a really great diversity and inclusion strategy is it boosts motivation amongst the workforce. You retain, employees. I feel more confident or more comfortable when I occupy a space where I can see myself, right? And other people are the same way, whether it's race, gender, sexuality, just background, socioeconomic status. When you have, a very diverse population, a very diverse group of people, whether it's the students you serve, the administration, the teachers, you're more likely to retain your employees. It helps the company's image. Sometimes, all motivation is motivation. And even if that is your sole goal, like, hey, I want to make sure that like my company or my institution looks good from the outside looking in, having a really great D&I strategy that's what can help. It also drives innovation. If you have enough people in the room that think differently about things, it can challenge and it can move forward, any innovation. It can help people become creative in these spaces because not everyone's thinking the same thing. You can always constantly grow and develop because you have people in the room that view the world a little bit differently. So all in all, like having a very great DEI workspace or institution helps drive the company or your institution a lot farther down the road.
So we've started talking about diversity and inclusion and equity and inclusion and why it's important and what that actually means. But now it's time to dig in a little bit deeper and really start to understand like what plays a part in why circumstances and corporations aren't diverse. Why don't people feel included? What exactly is stopping there from being equity in a particular environment? And that really just all stems from bias. And it's important to really understand bias. I think that a big buzzword, if you would say, is unconscious bias, and this notion that people are perceiving people as a certain way unconsciously. And I'd really like to challenge everyone who's watching this right now live or watching this later to really change that narrative and think about it as it's a conscious bias, like you're consciously choosing to see people this way. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person because of that, but it does mean that you have to do the work internally to reprogram your mind so that when you do see someone, you're not quick to perceive someone a certain way. And an example of bias is racism, like racial bias, there's sexism bias, there's ableism bias, there's cultural bias and ageism as well. And I think all of those play into different roles. And those are things, we talked a little bit about like intersectionality, and those biases are all there as well, the intersectional biases of everything. So for me, as a Black woman who identifies as a woman, and Black as well, like I visibly look Black, I do encounter racial bias as well as sexism bias or gender bias. And those things can't be separated. Those things, I can't be a woman one day, I can't be Black the next day, like those things are together. And those things, and that helps contextualize and really understand truly like what other bias or what other factors are coming into play as people perceive themselves, as well as how the world perceives them. And it's also, I guess, going back, talking about implicit bias, these are things that are unconsciously affecting our actions, our decisions, and really our understanding. And that's why it is important to really challenge that fact. Like maybe you're seeing someone, you're like feeling sort of angry, or you're feeling a little bit intimidated, and it's like stopping yourself and asking yourself, like, why? Like, why is that? Is it because of something you experienced and there is something that now anytime you see someone that way, like you're immediately triggered in some sort of sense? Or is it because of how your parents were and how they treated people who looked and acted a certain way, and because you saw that behavior, now you're going to act that way towards this other person? And everyone has them, no matter who you are. Even though I mentioned the fact that I am a Black woman, I also experience privilege in the fact that I'm relatively young. I'm also able-bodied as well. I have a Western accent. I'm in a dominant religion in the United States, it's Christianity. And those are all things that allow me to experience elements of privilege, but it doesn't, and could also change my view of how I perceive other people. But it's really on the onus of me, as well as everyone else, to make sure that they take the time and that make set the intention that they are going to change how they see things. As we are working hard to change the face of STEM, you're also working hard to change how you're seeing other people as they're pursuing STEM careers. And implicit bias and structural racism kind of go hand in hand. So we talk a lot about how we live in a patriarchal society. We've seen things of white supremacy in the past few months during this pandemic. And because of that, that's why when you think of implicit bias, it does pay a good hand into the structural racism that we have in society. When we look, for example, within this pandemic, and who has access to the vaccines and who doesn't, and who has like more health risk or who are dying more frequently because of COVID as well. Like those are things that you kind of have to really challenge and really start to understand that because of what people are already assuming, this is how it's negatively impacting the different things that are happening to specific groups of people. And microaggressions as well. So we've talked about stereotypes, we've talked about implicit bias. These microaggressions also play a very big part into why you see implicit bias or why you have these stereotypes. And microaggressions are really the subtle ways in which people say things that they may perceive them to be a compliment, but there's the reason why you're saying that is because of the stereotypes and the implicit bias that you've already set for me. So for example, if someone were to tell me that I speak well, which I've heard before, it's, oh, well, you're saying that because you perceive Black people to not speak or act a certain way, and that's due to your stereotypes, and that is due to your bias. So really making sure that you're checking your tone, checking what it is that you're saying to different groups of people, because while you may think it is well-intended, in reality it's not, and it actually means things due to the structural racism that we talked about before, as well as the stereotypes that people have.
Okay, so now that we've kind of gone through discussing a little bit about bias and microaggressions and how those things can kind of tie into holding back or maybe negatively affecting how we deliver educational equity, we can, maybe discuss a little bit about equity. Devin, can you go to the next slide, please? So just real quick, educational equity is achieved when all students receive the resources they need so that they graduate prepared for success after high school. Just touching real quick again on Shoyo's really great points about bias and stereotypes. If we're just kind of taking it from the perspective of, there are people that maybe present themselves differently or have different lifestyles that they're born into, and some things that they can control, other things that they can't. How can we make everybody feel included and also make sure that they're prepared to go to the next level, regardless of what their goals are or their career path may be going forward in the next steps of their life? So just taking a quick look at some numbers here. I'm big on numbers, so I'm going to give you guys a couple data points here, but just taking a quick look at the number of students enrolled in post-secondary institutions. If you notice here, it's a pretty big disparity between whites and other groups, and that could possibly be because not only of the financial difference or financial gap, but maybe we can also consider like the environment that students are in. There's a lot of students that are dropping out of school, even during high school. And if we go on to the next slide, we'll see that, but I'm sorry. So we have some students that are leaving school sometimes after 16, 17 years old. With that in mind and the changing environment, with technology becoming a key player in business, there's a lot of jobs that are being taken away. A lot of students can't really get part-time jobs in retail, or a lot of part-time jobs just aren't really available anymore. So how can we prepare students while they are still in high school, while they are in undergraduate school, so that when they get to the next level, they're ready and prepared to get a job, and maybe they even have the experience so that they don't have to take on those part-time jobs or what have you to get to the next step. Devin, can you go to the next slide? So looking just at a distribution of degrees, again, currently there are a lot of females starting to get degrees, which is good. We're seeing some increase here from the year 2015 and 2016. But what does that say about the next degrees, master's degrees and doctorate degrees? We have a doctor here with us, which is amazing, but there's also a lot of young women that want to go to the next level, maybe get their master's degrees or their doctorate degrees, and they don't have the resources to do that. Maybe they don't even have the motivation to do that because they don't see people that look like them in that space. So that's one reason why we're here. And we're also trying to urge others to maybe change the way that they deliver their content, their learning environment, so that we can maybe continue to motivate students to want to go on to the next level, to want to matriculate through the master's and the PhD programs. So this is just a quick breakdown of like some people that I know, particularly from Frostburg State University. I met quite a few students that maybe graduated and they had some trouble finding employment after college. They graduated even with STEM degrees. I had a couple people that were actually tutoring me in chemistry, and they had to come back to school after getting their bachelor's because they couldn't get a job just with a bachelor's degree. So just looking at the kind of like a quick little flow. After school, students may graduate with little to no tangible industry experience, maybe because they play a sport or maybe because they want to work a part-time job. And so they don't really get the industry experience towards what they're looking to do for their long-term career. Going forward, then they, a lot of times employers are looking for people that are more job ready, kind of plug and play type employees that they can just kind of come in and already have industry experience. So a lot of students then, they kind of have to go and work those part-time jobs that are now not really available the way that they used to, because technology is kind of filling the gap for some of those types of jobs and positions. So they go back to school and study for certs or maybe even a master's program. But again, they still might need the finances to get those things done. And then they may get out of school with opportunities to either do a co-op or research, but sometimes they still don't have that industry experience. So it's hard for them to actually get gainful employment once they still get out of either a master's or a PhD program. So what's something that we can do as leaders of thinking to kind of maybe even streamline the process of graduating? See, with this is actually a quick little chart of back in the 1980s, like how much it costed to go to school, how much books were, also like what was the format. A lot of people were going to school full time back then, and they could also work part-time jobs, but because again, the cost is a little bit more expensive, you might have to do a little bit more to be able to stay in school. And so with that global environment changing every day, it's important to make sure that all students have an unbiased opportunity to succeed, not only based on what they look like, based on what their financial situation is, based on what they believe. How can we make sure that everybody is able to achieve?
So I guess like one of the ways that we can combat, disparities in educational equity, implicit or even explicit bias, some of the things that Devin, Shoya, and Courtney previously talked about is through allyship. Devin, if you can go to the next slide. So, well, what is allyship, right? Like allyship is kind of become a buzzword in itself. Also, I know Shoya mentioned earlier some other buzzwords. Allyship has kind of become this big, sort of in a way, trendy buzzword or thing for people to talk about, especially with the way social media is today, right? With so much stuff coming out on the news, on different social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or what have you. What is allyship? And the way that we're sort of approaching it is allyship as an actionable thing, right? So allyship in general, right? It might have different definitions depending on what space people are in, but in general, an ally is someone who pretty much takes advantage of their privilege to help support a marginalized group, right? A group that does not have that same level of privilege. The two bullets below the first, you'll see are quotes that I pulled from a couple of articles. One is from an article called On Making Black Lives Matter, where Roxane Gay talks about the fact that, we need tangible action from people who claim to be allies, right? We need people to stand up and take on these problems as if it's their own, right? Because it doesn't just belong to whatever the issue is, it doesn't just belong to the marginalized group, right? It's an overall, sometimes we hear people say like, these are human rights issues, right? This doesn't just belong to this one group because it's what they're experiencing. It takes the people around them, right, to make the change as well, working hand in hand. The third quote says, we don't need people to just understand the problems. We need them to feel the problems, to embed the problems, to empathize with the problems that exist from oppression. That's from Anna Sophia Barrows, who's the project coordinator of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Rotman School of Management. And that quote was actually taken from a session that was done at the University of Toronto with some professors who actually are teaching in the STEM fields there at the University of Toronto. And some of them were actually from other universities as well. But they were pretty much just talking about, how to be an ally in STEM, right? What does allyship for folks in STEM look like? And again, right, it's about that action. It's about those tangible things that people can do to sort of, in a way, reach their hand back and pull, right? They see people struggling, they see people going through things, they see people maybe being victims of bias or stereotypes or microaggressions. It's taking your power and your privilege to step in, right, and change that scenario. Next slide. So when we talk about allyship, like I said, the way we look at it is allyship as an action, right? Or through action, allyship through action. Unfortunately, though, again, because of the way social media is, there's a few different forms of allyship. There's, and the first one I'm going to go over is performative allyship, which is not so great. Pretty much performative allyship is pretty much when someone who claims to be an ally is doing things for approval or for attention, right? So when thinking about performative allyship, think about the motivation, like what's the motivation behind what I'm doing? That's really how you should think about allyship in general. But part of the motivation behind performative allyship often goes along the lines of what's here on the screen, where, if it makes you feel good about yourself, or you feel like you're doing the right thing or it's what you're supposed to do, more than likely, whatever it is that you're doing probably falls in the category of performative allyship, which oftentimes can be seen as it's no better than no allyship at all. And moreover, even for the marginalized groups, a lot of times as a result of that performative allyship, people who are part of the marginalized group that you're supposedly being an ally for can often feel betrayed, right? Because it's not real, it's not genuine. It can feel like a trap, it can feel like a false sense of security. I think you're here to help me, but in actuality, right, you're here to really promote yourself and make yourself feel better. So that's just a little bit about performative allyship. And on the next slide, you can see a few, kind of like a few examples of forms of performative allyship. Someone who may be bandwagoning, or someone who's doing it because everybody else is doing it, right? This is what I'm supposed to do, right? Or folks who are doing things, maybe posting about something, or maybe taking pictures, or maybe doing what they see everyone else doing, or doing something because they were called out for not participating, right? All of those things fall within the category of performative allyship because it's really, it's not genuine. That's what it really comes down to, right? Is how genuine or not genuine it is, and your motivation behind it. Next slide. So on the contrary, authentic allyship, that's what we want. That's what, anyone who wants to be an ally, this is what you want to achieve, right? So allyship in its genuine form is using your privilege to amplify others' voices. So it's not just talking the talk. I think someone mentioned that before, right? It's not just talking the talk, it's walking the walk, and it's understanding that there is a power structure in place, right? And basically giving up your power to enable somebody else, right? The motivation behind authentic or genuine allyship would be something along the lines of putting yourself out there, checking your own privilege, and doing the work. Again, it's going right back to that action, right? The tangible, actionable behavior that you can put out to help others. So, for people who are often in a position of privilege, right, where they don't necessarily have to deal with implicit bias or stereotypes or microaggressions, things of that nature, to be an authentic ally is going to be uncomfortable because, again, you have to give up that power, right? And a lot of times that's uncomfortable. You might not want to do it. It can be painful, but that's just kind of a part of the process of giving up your power, confronting your privilege and your own implicit biases, which can be painful. But at the end of the day, the goal is to acknowledge, what the realities are and do the quote unquote dirty work to actually create that change, right? And even I know sometimes there's a lot of, I guess, concern around allyship, around like, well, what if I make a mistake, right? Like, how do I approach a mistake I made, or, I don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. I think that's a part of being an ally, right? That's a part of authentic allyship. No one expects perfection. But when you do mess up or you do make a mistake, it's someone who's an authentic ally or a genuine ally is someone who's willing to take that constructive criticism, right? Own up to it, and then be proactive to get better, be better, whether that's through educating yourself, whether that's through creating a space for dialogue with other people, right? For you to help yourself understand what it is that they're going through, right? It's about putting yourself in other people's shoes. It's about empathy. Next slide. So then this slide and the next two slides to follow are kind of some quick hit, kind of introductory tidbits about what it means to be an ally and what you can do as an ally. So here it says to be an ally is to take on the struggle as your own, to transfer the benefits of your privilege to those who lack it, to amplify the voices of the oppressed before your own, to acknowledge that even though you may feel pain, the conversation isn't about you, to stand up even when you feel scared, to own your mistakes and decenter yourself, and lastly, to understand that your education is up to you and no one else. So these 7 tips, I guess, so to speak, kind of just highlight what it means to be an ally overall. And then on the next slide, there's actually some do's, and then the slide after that, there's some don'ts. But for the do's, just one of the ones that I wanted to really highlight is being open to listening, right? The first step is to listen, to absorb the information, and to understand what it is that other people are experiencing and feeling, right? Especially if you are not a part of that group that's being marginalized, right? You can try to understand, but the first step in understanding is, first of all, listening, not assuming that just because you might think what's going on or what have you. Is being open to listening, and then being willing to step in and participate. Then the next slide on the don'ts, here's a few don'ts, just things to kind of be aware of. And I think a lot of these don'ts will kind of help steer clear of actions and things that fall within the category of performative allyship. So, don't expect to be taught or to be shown, right? Like, it's on you to educate yourself, to do the research, to be willing to get involved. Because, the community that you're supposed to be supporting, they're already dealing with the issues that they're dealing with, right? And all it does is add more work onto them to have to teach you everything, right? Or to have to constantly be saying, like, do this or do that, or don't do this or don't do that. So one of the number one things that you can do as an ally, right, to be a genuine ally, to support whatever cause it is that you claim to support, is to do the research, do the work, put in the time to educate yourself, right? If you have questions, cool, but it's not on the group that is experiencing the hardship to educate and tell you everything that you're supposed to do.
So what can we do, right? So the whole point, we're going to end this with some very specific recommendations before we open it up for questions from us. We have these recommendations broken down into age demographics. So I'll get us started with the K through 8 recommendations. So the first thing really is expose your students to STEM in all various forms and what that looks like. Invite people from different industries, different backgrounds, to give your students the opportunity to dream about the possibilities. I know for me as a chemist, like, typically when you hear the chemist, you probably think I'm in a lab and I make things. I'm not a chemist that makes things. I don't like making things. I don't do synthetic chemistry at all. I'm a benchtop chemist, yes, but there are other things you can do with chemistry. Science communication is a new one. You can write and do things like that. So really just expose students to different STEM careers. Partner with organizations like NSBE Junior, Skype a Scientist, Novachet, Junior Achievements. Try to get students involved in their programs. They have lots of outreach programs, and also organizations can come and work with your students to host internal programs. So take advantage of a lot of these resources for underrepresented groups, the LGBTQ+ community, disabled community, to really just show your students themselves in these careers. You also can implement college student volunteer programs. So you can invite college students that are majoring in STEM related fields and education related degrees to help do like something as simple as studying with your students for tutoring, things like that. But programming, you want to make sure that you're creating programming based on the needs of your students. So, and that could look like different things. That could look like trying things until you find something that works, but really recognize that all students have very different needs and specific needs. So trying to come up with ways early on for the K-8 community, for those students that you might not, it's not a Band-Aid fix. Having one program, one day, in like one school year isn't going to do the trick, but making sure that you're really intentional about the types of programming that you're putting on, the types of organizations that you're partnering with, can really make the difference for a lot of students.
So for high schoolers, I think that, so we talked about like K-8, where it's like really getting them the exposure of like what it is and starting to kind of develop their language surrounding it. And I think in high school, it's really allowing them to kind of be able to see firsthand like what that could look like, what a degree, what does it look like to be in the field working as a STEM professional. And so one thing that high schools can do is to offer a curriculum for straight STEM trades. So giving them the option of like, instead of going to college, going to the workforce. I know one thing that my high school had was you could get like a certificate program to be like a pharmaceutical technician or a certified nursing assistant or even an EMT. And those are awesome opportunities for people who may not want to go all the way into becoming a PhD professional or anything like that, but giving them that targeted exposure so that they can go out and go ahead and start working in the STEM field and having a good life fulfilling career. Connecting students with alumni is also a really good thing that high schools can do, reaching back to the people who you see are graduating or doing well. Like I know me personally, I definitely go back to my college a lot and talk about my experiences. And I think that also helps people really start to visualize and envision what it actually could be because they know someone who's actually doing something that they are aspiring to do. And then educating students on their contributions made by Black and other underrepresented individuals in STEM. So Devin talked a little bit in the beginning about Hidden Figures and how this sparked what her desire for MacScientists to be this brand and this platform. And there should be more stories like that. There should be more avenues and opportunities for people in high school to kind of know about people who really did amazing things and were able to make such significant contributions, because if they start to know that that is something that is possible, they'll start to dream it themselves and want to pursue things that will allow them to achieve those goals and ambitions that they've set.
So Courtney, you wanna start this slide off, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, Carrie, you got it.
Okay, so for colleges and universities, kind of sort of similar to a little bit of what we were talking about for recommendations for high school. So one of the things for the colleges and universities would be internship opportunities, right? So Court had talked about in the educational equity section, the fact that, you know, kids, a lot of times students come out of school without any industry experience. And so internships could be a great way to give students some work experience to actually, you know, have tangible hands-on experience, or at least, you know, some visual experience in some sense of what it would be like, right? You know, I'm spending 4 or 5 years, how many ever years it may be in school. Like, I want to know what I'm getting myself into, right? When my time is done. Similarly with co-op, I attended Drexel University, which is like, I think worldwide known for its co-op program. And so, you know, the co-op program, it's definitely a larger undertaking. So that's something that, you know, it would take some time to implement into a college or university. I would say short-term internship opportunities would be the direct approach immediately. But if you want to look at the co-op program, the way Drexel had it set up, at least, is that you have for pretty much any of our STEM related degrees, there's a co-op requirement. And so either you can do a 4-year degree where you have one co-op experience, and one co-op experience is 6 months, is a 6-month period of time where you are working. So you can take classes, but the co-op is actually built into your degree requirements. So pretty much whatever year that was, if I did 4 years, I had one co-op. So I think my 3rd year of school, Half the year I would have been in classes full time, and then the second half of the year I would have been doing my co-op with like an actual legitimate business, doing work in the field that I was studying. In my case, I actually did 5 years, so I could actually get 3 co-op experiences. So I actually did 3 different co-ops. So I came out of school with 1.5 years worth of work experience, which came in handy for me when it came time for me to graduate. So I actually had a resume that I could use to apply for jobs. And honestly, if it wasn't for that co-op experience, I probably wouldn't have, had a plan coming right out of school. Because I did the 5-year 3 co-op. I finished my 3 co-ops going into my last year of school. So I already had my resume built out, and I was able to go to conferences and do interviews and things of that nature. And I was able to have my job locked in where I work now, Avanade. I had that locked in by the end of my junior year. So I pretty much spent my senior year already having a job locked in. All I had to do was focus on my academics at that point. I was done playing basketball. You only get 4 years to play. So I was done playing my 4 years of basketball. So I was able to spend my senior year pretty much doing what I wanted, going to school and kind of enjoying my last year of school, not having to worry about too much. And I think that was primarily because of that co-op experience that I had. And if it hadn't been for that, I could I don't know how long it would have taken me to find a job, but I'm sure that the process would have been a lot harder, a lot more difficult. But because of that co-op experience, it made it seamless for me. I didn't really have to worry about anything going into my last year of school. In addition to, I guess, like co-ops and internships, another way to prepare students, right, for life after college is through mock interviews, right? So preparing them for what it's going to be like to actually interview with companies, to actually go on a job search. What is that like, right? It's I would say, like, at the college and university level, it's all around preparation. For my own personal experience, we actually had a designated co-op class. And literally that class, I think it was a semester long. That class took us through everything from what to wear, right? Attire, how to put a resume together. We did mock interviews. So we did like interview questions in small groups and things, and they brought in professionals to work with us on those mock interviews. They brought in, professors and stuff who had worked in industry to kind of work with us and give us feedback on how to go about our interviews. So that also helped, to prepare us for those co-op experiences or internship experiences while we were in school, but also when it came time for life after graduation or looking for a job or whatever our career pursuit was after graduation. And then lastly, providing access for students to graduate with certifications. So this is a big one. When I was in school, there were some classes where you could come out with a certification or a certificate. But a lot of times students were kind of doing this on their own. It wasn't really built into the curriculum. There were like very select classes. And for myself, because I work for a Microsoft company and we're so Microsoft focused, Microsoft has a lot of their own certifications. And right now at my job, actually, it's part of a job requirement to get certifications. It's a part of your review process to get promoted, to get pay increases and things of that nature. And had I had more preparation for certifications, it wouldn't have kind of been this whole new experience. But, I've kind of learned as I go through my job and whatnot. But I think the certifications, preparing students while they're in school for the certifications will definitely help when it comes time for them to look for jobs. Because a lot of times now employers will emphasize certifications even if you don't have a degree.
So here's all of our contact information. This is all the information that we want you all to have. If you want to keep in contact with MacScientists as a whole, there's our website, our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are all at MacScientists. Then here's all of our individual information. If you have questions specific to software engineering, for any form of like IT security or chemistry, you can contact any of us on our personal emails. Our websites, Ray and I have websites. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can also talk to 3 of us on Twitter. Carrie's not on Twitter anymore. But yeah, this is just content information for all of you. You all will get access to these slides when we upload them. So you all don't have to worry about writing everything down right now. We'll keep the slide in there. And with that, we'd like to thank you all for your time and attention. Thanks for attending our workshop, and I'll stop sharing my screen so we can open the floor up for Q&A.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? I know Kelly's mentioned that she was joining in from Brazil. I had that same reaction, Devin. Any other questions? Albert, did I do okay? Albert's our
You did.
Awesome.
You did.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed the content too. It was really engaging.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no questions, we still have 3 minutes remaining. Otherwise, we can end early. If anybody needs to go anywhere, I'm not sure really how to dismiss a virtual panel session.
Hi, girls.
Hi.
First of all, I'm not Kelly, I'm her daughter, because
okay.
she doesn't speak English, but she really wanted to hear what you had to say. So she asked me to watch it and translate it for her.
Wonderful.
Oh.
And it was amazing, really amazing.
Thank you.
Obrigado.
I liked it.
Just FYI. My company, we have an office in Brazil, and actually one of my coworkers, he came over from Sao Paulo to New York a couple years ago. So like he'll teach me Portuguese phrases here and there. So yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank y'all so much for your presentation. We really did enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
having us.
Y'all take care.
Bye.